What's up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. It's your boy Marty Bent here on a lovely Monday morning. Getting the week started off on a high note. F1 week here in Austin, Texas, but we're here sitting down with a team from Guatemala, the IBEX Mercado team. We're sitting down with brother co-founders Jose and Juan Limas and Esteban de la Peña. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Nice.
Thanks,
you.
Thank you for
Thanks for having us, Marty.
Well,
Excited to be here. Long-time listeners, huh?
well, thank you for that.
Big fans.
That's it's flattering. I'm big fans of you guys, so I guess to set the stage for all the freaks out there, I met one of your, I guess he's a lead engineer or one of your engineers, Carlinho, in Nashville a few weeks ago when I was up there, and he was telling me about everything you guys are building down in Guatemala and El Salvador. As El Salvador rolled out their Bitcoin law this summer. And I just thought the work that you guys are putting in down there is extremely impressive and wanted to get you guys on the podcast to discuss what's happening in Central America, because obviously I'm up here in the United States and in Texas now. This podcast has been very US centric, and I just think it's very important to get a different perspective on the show. And I think you guys have an incredible one, considering the work that you guys have been doing the last 6 months, particularly. So I guess we can start. Carlinho, give us a little background before we hit record here. IBEX Mercado started 2017, 2018. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what drove you guys to start the company?
Well, in 2017, I was basically out of a job by choice. I wanted to, move away from what I have been doing traditionally. And so in 2017, I finally could. My girlfriend at the time, now my wife, had moved to the Netherlands to do her LLM, her master's in business. And so I tagged along. And while I was in the Netherlands, I thought, what can I do? So as everyone would like to do, I became a day trader. and so, but I had actually found out about Bitcoin in 2012, and I loved it, and I tried to buy some. But at that time in Guatemala, I was the only guy registered in local Bitcoins, and there wasn't really a market. The only market was empty GOTS, right? And so I tried to send money. Go.
I was going to say we have a local Bitcoins OG on the show. It's impressive.
Yeah. And then the empty GOTS thing, I tried to send money to their bank account in Japan, but the wire kept getting bounced because of just Guatemala was on the banking blacklist. I'm not sure if you're aware of that or how that works.
Guatemala was why was Guatemala specifically on a blacklist?
Well, at that point, I believe
The bullet froze.
So how it works is that rating system for countries, right? Yellow, orange, red, black. And so what happened was that Guatemala, because of their banking secrecy, was on the blacklist. And so nobody would take wire transfers from Guatemala. It'd be like you have to have a commercial contract. The bank asks why you're sending money, and you don't have a commercial relationship, and invoices and all that stuff, you just get bounced. So couldn't really buy Bitcoin. Then I logged in, was one of the first users in Coinbase when they were giving away like $30 or something like that. But again, because I'm Guatemalan, they wouldn't open the account, which irks me to this day because they keep sending me mails like, why don't you finish your setup? You don't want me.
Stop clogging up my
Right.
inbox.
And so finally, yeah, finally in 2017, because I was living abroad, I was able to buy my first Bitcoin, and then reconnected with it, started looking into it, um, and then I called my brother and I told him, "Listen, you remember Bitcoin? We talked about it way back," and he said, "Yeah, I remember." I'm telling him, "Listen, this is about to take off. I have this feeling, right?" And I thought it was gonna be about to take off because it had just had a slight run up on the news of Japan making it a legal currency, not legal tender like El Salvador, but just had legalized the use of Bitcoin in Japan. And there were stores in Japan accepting Bitcoin and other stuff. And so I told him, listen, one country made it legal. This is very good news. And so he started, like, we started putting a little bit of money in and a little bit of money in. And then we started reading a whole bunch. We got into the whole ICO craze, everything. But our core was always Bitcoin, right? And so at one point, I told him something along the lines that I don't want to live in a world where Bitcoin doesn't succeed. So I'm gonna just see how much cash I can get together that I'm not gonna need, and then I'm gonna buy. Everything else is gonna go into Bitcoin, and that I did. I put pretty much all of my money into Bitcoin at that time. And then once I ran out of money, I called my brother again and I said, because he had done the same thing. We were moving together, right? And so I called him up and I said, listen, we put all our cash into this, we put all the money we put into this, but I want to do more. I want to put my work, my energy, my effort into helping Bitcoin succeed. And then we started like throwing ideas around what we could do in this space, and we had this idea of setting up a Bitcoin embassy, and we had a bunch of ideas, just a bunch of ideas. But eventually one day, talking, we came to the realization that if you don't have access points, on ramps for Bitcoin, then everything else doesn't really matter. And so, and we knew that because coming from Guatemala and having such a difficult time, getting into Bitcoin, not because we didn't know about it, not because we didn't want to, but just because it was practically impossible to do it unless you had like a different passport or were abroad and that type of stuff. We said it's really important for our countries to have easy access to this. And that's where IBEX started.
Hell yeah. So you noticed there's a disconnection in the market where Bitcoin was taking off around the world. You were able to access it in the Netherlands. You had not been able to access it in Guatemala, so you decided, fuck it, I'll build my own exchange, make sure that people like me can get access in Guatemala. And what was it?
Pretty much.
Little did we know what it would take.
Let's get into that. What did it take? What was it like? Starting from zero, like, all right, let's start a Bitcoin exchange. What's that like?
Well, tough. You have to know the first thing we built. Like we spent a year building out a trading engine and this very sophisticated piece of software, and we came to market, and it was DOA, just dead. And the reason was twofold. One, Guatemala is basically a Bitcoin importing country. There's no miners. People that earn Bitcoin here, it's not we don't have sell pressure. There's only buy pressure. And so that was hard. And then the other thing that was really hard is that there's very little financial literacy. So we'd go out, and first you have to cross the hurdle of convincing somebody that they want to buy Bitcoin, right? So that's a tall word. That's very difficult, as you probably know yourself. But then once they get convinced and they say, okay, I'll buy Bitcoin with you guys, and then we have to go into explaining how an order book works, how a limit order works, how a market order works, how a filler kill, and all of this just completely new world. We lost them. Like, people here wanted to just buy Bitcoin, like you buy a t-shirt, right?
Mhm.
You go, how much is that t-shirt? $15. Okay, I'll take it. And so we just had to throw all of that work in the trash and start anew. We hooked up with some pretty awesome liquidity partners in the US, and became more of a brokerage service and access point at that point in time. And that's where it really started to get traction.
I like that phrase. Guatemala is only providing buy pressure. It's something I like to hear. So, it's, so
Yeah, only.
so first attempt, first go around, you had essentially trouble creating a marketplace, two-sided marketplace, and so you went to get liquidity via U.S.
Trouble is a kind word.
And so what finally started, obviously you became more of a brokerage service, and so it just became easier for people to use IBEX Mercado to just buy Bitcoin. And is it true that you guys operate similar to the way Swan Bitcoin does here in the United States, where people can't hold Bitcoin on IBEX, or am I misconstruing that?
No, that is correct. We're non-custodial.
Mm-hmm.
Although, because of how there's no banking APIs in Central America, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to do everything manually. So it takes us a little bit longer to deliver the Bitcoin. So we'll keep it, but we'll keep it a couple of minutes or a couple of hours, not forever.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're not interested. Part of it is we want people to hold their Bitcoin because we think it's important, but also part of it has to do with liability exposure, right? The less money you keep from other people, the less problems you have.
Yeah, no, and I actually sort of like these market forced frictions that actually force people to use Bitcoin, what many would deem the correct way off the bat, starting with self-custody and just throwing people into the deep end. Some people say it's dangerous, but people are going to have to learn. I think it's important.
It's a 10-minute talk. It's just really 10 minutes. You explain, you talk, and that's it. And it's totally worth it. I think also in the learning part, if I can chip into that, Jose, was when you guys started out and we started talking together, because I met Juan Pablo at a hackathon I organized once back in 2017. And I think also the technical part, people are not really used too much in using an app for something this sophisticated, like, putting the big amounts of money on something and you don't have a real person behind that is talking to you, felt very weird for the market. And I think one of the biggest the keys to our success has been that, we've been really straight up with real people. At the beginning, it was just us three, I remember. And the goal is, by now, what we do in a day is probably what we did in the first year. It was really just the fact that our customers could talk to us directly, and they would write to us, and then you would explain to them in this 10-minute talk on why self-custody is important and how to do it. And then, once you do the first step, and once they start buying, they automatically just creates more curiosity, and then they go deeper into it, and then they see, and you just provide the tools for them to do the proper self-custody, and that's it. It's super easy, really. And I think by now, yeah, when we've had a couple of talks like on the crashes, when our customers talk to us like, oh, I'm getting nervous, should I sell? And it's definitely nobody. Not selling here.
You can't sell here.
No
You have
sell
to find something
button.
else. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Well,
So you become like their psychologist or a therapist at some point.
I know what
Fun.
that's like. I've been in that position as well as somebody who's been shilling Bitcoin for quite a while. And so, what are your recommendations when they come to ask you about self custody? Do you have like go to wallets, or do you let them? You push them towards information resources where they can decide for themselves what wallet works best for them. You recommend mobile.
We recommend a couple of wallets, and um, not to. I don't know how you feel about plugs or not here. We're not working with them or anything, but through our experience and through us doing our custody, we usually recommend Trezor Wallet for our customers for cold storage. You know, once you get above a certain amount, before a cell phone wallet is good enough, we feel. But let's say once you start keeping real money, let's say over $1,000, we generally try to steer people towards a hardware wallet solution.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, I'm adjusting my volume here. They're doing construction, I think, on the block behind me. That's what that loud noise was. But no, I mean, again, I really appreciate and like the fact that people are being forced to learn how to self-custody early on in their Bitcoin journey. And I think, like, what would you guys say? Obviously, I'm sure you've heard the alarm bells that some people will send off, like, oh, you shouldn't push people into self-custody right away, like they're going to shoot themselves in the foot. Like, from experience from running this exchange, what do you see? Do you think that's a bit overblown? Do you think people sort of get it and get comfortable with it?
I think there's a couple of things here. But first of all, there is a very big difference between banking in the U.S. and banking in Guatemala and our countries. Here, and it's one of the reasons that I really got Bitcoin. I would like to say I got 80% of Bitcoin's value proposition the first time I read the white paper. And it's because of what happens with our banking partners here in Guatemala. Here, you're very, very aware that your money is not your money if you have it in a bank. Like, it's palpable, right? It's front and center. So, for example, here, you can't withdraw cash. Like, I think the limit is like 10,000 quetzales, which is like a little over $1,000. And if you go with a check that's bigger than that, they won't give it out in cash. I've been through a banking bankruptcy. One of our banks went, actually in the 2000s, two different Guatemalan banks went bankrupt, and some of the money was just not returned. You just gone.
Oof.
And then finally, at any point in time, the banks here can just freeze your accounts for whatever reason. Like here, there's a weird thing that happens legally with presumption of innocence, where sometimes, depending on the charge, you have to prove you're innocent, and then you're considered guilty until you prove your innocence. And so, for example, if an employee goes and files a claim against your business, your bank's accounts are frozen until you prove that what that employee said is a lie. And that can take years. So
I actually used to work for a company that was based out of Ecuador and Colombia, and I do remember that being a thing. They were really worried about employees basically making claims like you just described, and getting caught up.
yeah, and so the thing is that if you come from that environment, like Bitcoin's unconfiscatable ability is absolutely, you don't have to sell me on it. It's a no-brainer. Absolutely, nobody should have access to my money but me.
Yeah. No, I love that this mentality exists. And again, like I said in the beginning of the episode, we get stuck, particularly here in America, in this Western view of the world. And again, that was sort of the thing that really popped into my mind, like something that stuck with me for the few weeks after having a conversation with Carlino in Nashville is people think like all these Western companies are going to build the infrastructure of Bitcoin, but I think it's going to be like the Central Americas, Africas of the world. People actually have very, very large problems, like the banking problems you just described. They're going to build Bitcoin infrastructure the right way, which seems to be what you guys are doing in El Salvador. I'm sorry for the loud bangs.
And the
No
value
worries.
proposition of Bitcoin is much greater in Central America and Latin America than it is in the Western countries or the first developed first world nations, because here you've got not just the custody part. A lot of people, I lived in Mexico for a bunch of years, and people don't want to use the banks. And you've got the devaluing currency, the rapidly devaluing currency. So Bitcoin is only volatile upwards in this environment. Even if in dollar
Yeah.
terms it loses half its value, in Argentinian pesos terms it's never been down this year. So the value proposition is like you take the value proposition of Bitcoin and you multiply that by 100 or 1,000, and that's how we see it in these countries. How that what is considered difficult to use or a barrier to entry in some other parts, it's easier to fix here, or rather, the value proposition is stronger in the Latin American economies.
Yeah, I have this quote I like to say: in the first world, Bitcoin is a luxury. In the third world, it's a necessity.
I'm just gonna repeat that because you froze. But to quote Jose, is in the first world or in the developing
sorry.
economies, Bitcoin is a luxury, and in our developing economies, and this one's, it's a necessity. By far, it's just a necessity. So if you look at the incentive structures, the incentive structure is there for us to push hyper Bitcoinization, you know, from the center of the world to the rest, because it just works. That's the whole point of Bitcoin. It works.
And so how do you see it progressing here? Obviously, we had El Salvador come out with the Bitcoin law this summer. They've implemented it. You have President Bukele shit posting on Twitter about volcano mining, and essentially the law in El Salvador has forced many multinational corporations to accept Bitcoin, and you guys have been helping them out with basically that functionality. I believe some of the large I saw. I just took a spin down your Twitter page today. I saw you tweeting about Starbucks and helping them out. What other companies have you been helping out, and what's that process been like? Are they coming to you like, all right, we have no idea how to accept Bitcoin? Like, what are we doing here? How can you guys help? What do we need to be looking at?
Yeah. No, well, the thing with the Bitcoin announcement is that for as great as it was for everybody in Bitcoin, right? Because we were just as caught up in the moment as everybody else. The fact of the matter is, it puts a lot of pressure on a lot of people that are not ready to accept Bitcoin, and mainly companies. So how we started, like after the euphoria died down, we sat down and we thought about this long and hard and all of the implications, right? And we thought, listen, this is great, but we need to go about the business and business owners and the corporations. For the individual, like for example, you have a bunch of wallets, you can do self-custody fairly easily and everything, but it's very difficult if you're a business that's going to accept it, because there are ready-made solution. There's no off-the-shelf. There's
Jose,
no
sorry to
way to
interrupt.
accept payments, or at least there wasn't any at that point in time.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I think we might just need to cut your video to make sure that your audio comes in as clear as
Okay,
possible.
I'll cut it.
Yeah.
Okay, give me a second. I'll switch Wi-Fi really fast here. Maybe Steven can fill in
Sure, I'll
because
fill
we've
in.
talked about this a
I'll
bunch.
tell a little bit about the story of how it all came about, because we were in Miami, a team of us with Carlos, me, Mario, and other friends, and Alvaro. We were in Miami for the Bitcoin conference when this came out, and everybody kind of knew something very important was coming, but nobody knew that it was going to be, become legal tender. I mean, positively, I thought this was going to happen in the next 5 years, realistically in the next 10, not now. And in our neighboring country, which is the second largest economy we interact with, Guatemala and El Salvador have very strong ties because they're so small. So they bring a lot of stuff from us and vice versa. But they came out, so we were jumping. We were there with Bitcoin Beach, Michael Peterson. We were really jumping with him, holding his hand, almost crying, and just jumping around outside like crazy. And then, as Jose was saying, the euphoria died down a couple of days. It took a couple of days, and then we were okay. What are we gonna do? What's the real deal here? Are we just gonna be an OTC service as we're doing here in Guatemala, or not?
And so, guys, just a quick check. Is this better?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So what I was saying previously is that Bitcoin is really easy for the individual, but very hard for the corporation, for the enterprise. Because when you're a business, and I'm not talking about, you own a bar and your finances are the bar's finances and vice versa. I mean, when you're a large corporation, when you're a Starbucks, when you're a McDonald's, how do you handle Bitcoin? How do you bring it into your treasury? How do you spend it if you want to spend it? Who's going to have access to those Bitcoins? And all of this, right now, it's all DIY. So we thought immediately we have to get some solutions ready for our, the enterprise, for corporations, because we have to onboard them. We cannot leave them behind. This is going to take two. Like Bitcoin takes more, and if we really want Bitcoin to take hold, we gotta get businesses comfortable with dealing with Bitcoin and using it. And so that was our focus when we started. And so the first thing we thought was, Bitcoin. If you're gonna accept the Bitcoin payments, the only reasonable solution is Lightning. You have to forget about on-chain. On-chain transaction is for final settlement for other use cases. If you want to go buy a cup of coffee, you use Lightning. And so we developed our Lightning infrastructure to push out to El Salvador.
How intense was that?
My brother's actually
super intense.
Oh,
Yeah, like what's the channel management like for
been a
these?
couple of months where,
Look at JP's eyes. That
first
tells
of
you.
all, you have to know that his name is actually Master of Channels.
So, as master of channels, what is the maintenance of the Lightning Network implementation been like on your side, Juan Pablo?
Yeah, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of unknowns still. Yeah, there's some intricacies with running channels. I read someone published a really good article, and it started out with managing your liquidity is more an art form than a science. And for the time being, this holds true. You don't know what to expect. Initially, that was a big hurdle. We reached out to a lot of the Lightning community. Some shout out to the Lightning Labs guys. We've got Evan from Seus Wallet. We talked with the guys from CBD. Andre gave us some of his time. Ben from LMBit. all the community, they were great. They were very generous, and I'm leaving a lot of people out. And at first we didn't know what to expect. And now that we have some metrics, it's still a challenge because they are evolving constantly, and keeping your channels healthy is not straightforward. But and I want to segue just into a comment. I think that Bitcoin adoption will happen in different tiers of self-custody, and also different tiers for the businesses that are handling Bitcoin. And the first thing is that people still denominate their lives in the local currency. In El Salvador, it's dollars. So they need an easy way to keep receiving dollars, even if they are getting paid in Bitcoin. And that's the first piece of the puzzle. And that can happen for the individual, mainly for the businesses. And if this is easy, the adoption will happen bottom up, because at first you'll just take in dollars, but you're already using Bitcoin. And once you have the ease of just with a click of a button, instead of having dollars in your account, you have Bitcoin in your account, making the transition to holding part of your wealth in Bitcoin, or part of your salary in Bitcoin, or part of what you take in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's breaking up. Sorry.
No,
Sorry,
you're coming in loud and clear for me, Juan. I was hearing it.
I think it's
so
on
it's
both
just-
sides of the internet. So yeah, it's so you're gonna have a bottom-up adoption, I think, and people will. The most important thing we've seen is to people just get comfortable using Bitcoin, and if using Bitcoin means doing it like they with a strike, and I think that was a stroke of genius, that you can keep your. Well, I don't like USDT, but that's beside the point. But you can have people can feel comfortable with having something they consider stable, and then they can do the migration to Bitcoin, but they're already doing the Bitcoin experience. And once you do the Lightning experience, you don't want to go back to anything else. It's mind-blowing how, if you haven't experienced Lightning, go just download one of the custodial wallets, guys, and try it out. It's really life-changing. And that's what I can see now. It's so easy to use, and it gives you control of your money, because you are in direct control of your Bitcoin. And depending on your technical knowledge and how much time you spend on it, you can go from full custody all the way through half and half, maybe have custody on chain, and have a self custody on chain, and a custodial service for the Lightning network, or you can do mixed custody. And it's really great, the flexibility it offers. And I think that's the way to really adopt Bitcoin on a personal level, and then it will happen on a merchant level, and on a business level.
Mm-hmm. And so, how has it been for the? I don't want to. Again, we pre-discussed. I don't want you guys to break any NDAs or anything, but I think this is a broad enough question. Like, have you noticed any of your enterprise customers begin to grok Bitcoin a bit more as you guys have been building out the tools to allow them to accept it and potentially custody it themselves? Have you seen any of them have somewhat of an aha moment, like, oh, maybe I do want to keep 10% of this revenue in Bitcoin, or something like that?
Well, it's interesting because we do have a couple of customers that are keeping of what they receive in Bitcoin, because it's a percentage of sales, and then if you keep that small percentage of sales in Bitcoin, it doesn't matter. So we do have customers. One was already a Bitcoiner, which it was really good to find out, and then the other ones they weren't Bitcoiners before, but they're interested in it, and they see it as a way of dollar cost averaging into it.
I would like to tell a little anecdote on that one, because before the 7th, the week before, we started training people how to use our tool, and we rented out a conference room in a hotel, and then the customers started to pile in. I think over 200 people came in. I trained them personally.
And the people, just to clarify, that were employees from the businesses that were using the Bitcoin payment terminal we provided.
Yeah. So in general, what you have is Salvadorians had like PTSD just from the dollarization process. They thought like everything was going to be super expensive, and seeing the price of Bitcoin at that time, what was it, 30 something? They thought it was, wow, super expensive. So they thought everything was just going to explode. And we took, the hour and a half we had with them, depending on the customer. I really took like 70% or more of the time just explaining Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin and the purpose of Bitcoin and the opportunity that they have and why they should self-custody, right? And it's impressive once they notice that, this is actually deflationary, and you put it in terms that they can grasp, like deflation, what it means, and because they've only lived inflation, right? So it's contrary to their nature to understand what deflation really means. And once you understand it, then just an aha moment, the bombs exploded in their head. And it was funny because out of that, now, I mean, I hope those people, they took down, downloaded the Achievable and took out the $30. That's what I also explained to them. And how to use it. Our solution is so simple that took, if much 30%. It was just how to set up your user, you create your Bitcoin payment terminal, and then you're pretty much good to go. You just put how many dollars the product costs, accept, you have a QR code, you scan it and you pay it, and that's it. So that's all we had to explain. So we really used that time to explain Bitcoin. And in general, I think we're going to see it over time. Right now, this push right now really helped. And what's happening right now in the price action is for sure helping people to understand Bitcoin and why they should save Bitcoin. I think the general idea and the concept that we always convey and express is you have to save in Bitcoin. That's the whole point. It's the only savings technology that we've had as Latin Americans, where right now we can have a little bit of a piece of the Internet of Money, and the Internet of Money is going to be used by 90% of everybody, of the whole society. So now you have the advantage to save it. And as a Salvadorian, you have the advantage of saving it as a currency, which means you're not paying capital gain taxes. By the way, here in Guatemala, there's also a law that backs us up that buying Bitcoin, you don't pay capital gain taxes. So that has made a big, and it's just a huge advantage. We can hold as much Bitcoin as we can and nothing will happen. You don't have to pay taxes. So, but the law is different though. Here in Guatemala, the law is different. It's based on if you have an asset that is in a foreign country and it's earning or producing yield in a foreign country, you don't pay yield on that. And that was basically made for, I'll put it in very blunt terms, like for the rich people to buy, shares of Tesla, whatever, and you don't pay taxes on that here. So that's not changing anytime soon. And that applies to Bitcoin as well. And that has given us a huge advantage in the market. I think a lot of Guatemalans are understanding that. And then again, that's why self-custody is important. But the effect that I think, or I hope to see from El Salvador is that when people start saving and just a little bit, the remittances that start to come in are going to make such a, big pressure. And now it makes sense to save that will push throughout the region. That I think remittances is going to push adoption a lot because it's just so cheap to send money now to El Salvador. I mean, it's 3 basis points or it's 0. So, how are you going to compare that to 30 to 15% what they're usually paying? The Guatemalan is going to ask the Salvadorian, what? You're not paying anything? And you're still saving and it works?
Well, and so that leads me to the question, do you think that puts pressure on other governments in Central and South America to adopt laws similar to the one that El Salvador did? Maybe not in the exact form that El Salvador implemented, but something that makes Bitcoin easier to use, more acceptable, and gives more certainty around individuals using using it as an everyday currency.
Well, what's interesting there, Matt, is that, and I think the ramifications of the legal tender status of Bitcoin in El Salvador have not been fully realized, is that there are bilateral trade agreements between most free countries where you will recognize the other country's legal tender as a currency. So right now, I know there's a lot of pushback and politicians saying like, no, this is only legal tender in El Salvador, it's not a currency, what have you. But this is going to impact, it's going to have wide-reaching consequences, because even in the U.S., you have this law where you recognize another country's legal tender as a currency. So the thing is that this is not going to be decided here. It's not going to be decided soon. This is probably going to be fought in The Hague. But unless you want to change your bilateral trade agreements and your current laws to exclude a particular currency or legal tender from this treatment, you have to say it is a currency, right? The law is very clear on this point.
I know.
And I know.
Well, it seems
I
like
heard some.
it seems like here in the U.S. and in the Western world in general, all the politicians are just like trying to brush that fact under the rug.
Yeah, and
just ignore
here
it.
as well in Guatemala, there was a talk with guys from the superintendent, the banking superintendent, and he was saying like, oh, even if it's legal tender, we don't have to, it doesn't make it a currency, right? Which is just false logic.
Right.
And so, like I said, this is not going to be decided here. This is going to be decided in The Hague, most probably, which is where all of these international agreements take place. But as far as the law, as it's currently written, it's very unambiguous. If it's legal tender, it's a currency. So
Exactly.
And
We should just be leaning into this all around the world, because I mean it's like it's an international trade agreement, correct? And
yeah.
And what will catapult this is having people just use Bitcoin, even if they don't know they're using Bitcoin. And what we're building out is making it easy for people to use Bitcoin. First in El Salvador, bringing it to the other regions. Guatemala, we're based here, so bringing it to Guatemala. And people are going to be using it already. And if enough people have Bitcoin, and use Bitcoin, they'll get interested in holding it. And I really like a phrase Esteban uses, and it doesn't matter what price you bought Bitcoin at. What matters is how long you wait before you spend that Bitcoin. And that's what's gonna happen here. Enough time will pass with people using Bitcoin that they will grasp, they will live with the implications of using this hard money that is gaining value over time. And this will make bottom-up pressure to adopt Bitcoin, and local authority will not be able to just go out and say stupid things like, no, it's legal tender, but since it was not emitted by a sovereign nation, you cannot use it. We will not consider it valid. That's crazy, man. And people will have enough interest vested in Bitcoin that they will push their institutions into accepting what is already written in law.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a different perspective on this. And it has to do more with infrastructure. Our business, what we're really doing is we're building the financial infrastructure of the 21st century. And by we, I mean everybody that's doing work on the Bitcoin Lightning /Lightning infrastructure. So this is going to be the infrastructure for the financial systems of the 21st century. There's a very clear and obvious reason for this. And the reason is everything right now is running on 50-plus-year-old technology. Everything in the banks. Like Swift, I think it's 70 years old, and everybody runs Swift. And what this does is that it creates an immense amount of friction at all levels. Because if we think that Swift is what underpins all of the financial ecosystems right now, and then you start layering things on top, right? And then you have, finally, you have the credit card companies, which is where your instant spending comes from, supposedly. So, but that instant payment that happened when you go to Starbucks, so to speak, that's not instant. That takes days to settle. And that is the big difference between Bitcoin and everything that came before it, where it is instant settlement. Even Lightning transactions are instant settlement. The reason why is because you have basically escrows. So every Bitcoin in the Lightning network has to be committed by somebody, right? So you cannot spend a Bitcoin in Lightning that hasn't been already put into the network. However that happens. So you are having instant settlement across all your infrastructure. And not only that, you have way less friction. So, you know, that's what we're doing. That's what we believe in. And I think the important thing here is being able to transmit all of these savings, all this new technology to businesses, to financial institutions. And they can see for themselves that it works better. And now we have to show them how they can make money with it.
Yeah, I mean,
So
passively stacking sats can be a big thing for businesses. Right?
It's so simple and it's so difficult.
But not only that, like for example, right now, payment processing is a huge issue, right? Now, most places in the US, they pay like 2%, right? Which you say, okay, it's not a lot. But that's 2% has to come out, that comes out of your net, right? It doesn't, no, it comes out of your gross, not from your net. So for example, if you sell 100K, that 2% is 2K. But if from that 10, you know, that 100K, you only keep 10% as net, then that 2% is 2,000 out of the 10,000 you were supposed to earn. So that's 20%. That's a huge amount of money for a business. And what happens if you move to Lightning? That goes down to what? To 1%, to 0.5%, to 0.3%, to nothing percent.
Yeah,
that is money, because then you're not talking about 2%. You're talking about reducing that 20% to 5% to 3%. Are you going to tell me businesses are not interested in that?
Well, not only are they interested, I mean, you can make a very strong argument that it is in the best interest of shareholders to adopt that. Like if they don't,
and it is,
it is
absolutely.
Yeah, I think
and
the
so,
key
but,
also.
but we have to demystify it.
Mm-hmm.
We have to bring it down to real world applications, like I explained to you. Okay, it's going to bring your 20% down to this percent, right? By making this move, and you have to give them the tools that they are in control of their finances, because that's the other thing here. We can't go out with, you know, some janky tools like, oh yeah, and here everybody's going to have a wallet and everybody's going to spend, and then you have to consolidate funds. That's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
We have to build enterprise level tools for these customers, and they'll be incentivized to you know, go out and ask their customers, you know, I'd rather you pay me in Bitcoin. I'll supersize your drink. I'll make another small promo. pay me in Bitcoin.
And I think that's going to happen soon, because what you just heard from Jose is, I think it's also one of the key of why we have so many customers and so big ones, because we were able to talk, or Jose was able to talk in the correct language so that the accountant would understand. The accountant is the key person. He's the one that makes or breaks the whole thing, because you're paying him to tell you no. Basically, that's what you're paying him. So you had to first convince the head, right? But the accountant, he needs a way to put it into his books. He needs a way to make monetary sense out of this. And the big hurdle with Bitcoin is that you can understand all these arguments and everything, but until you don't live it, you don't really know it, right? So you hear it and you always start slowly, and then it's suddenly, and then slowly, and then suddenly, right?
Yeah.
And that same way is just with human nature, and how do we understand and use technology. You have to start very slowly. So I do hope that over the time we start seeing that customers start understanding this, and they start going down on the percentage of dollars that they have in their bank account. And we made that function super easy. It's just a slider. You just have to slide it, and I think we spend a lot of time explaining that function. Just have to slide it, slowly. You're not going to get 90% of your transactions suddenly in Bitcoin. I mean, if it's 10%, that's awesome. So, go sliding.
If you're one of these multinational corporations, like, why not? Like how large is the El Salvadorian market compared to the rest of their operations? And like, how much would it hurt to take 100% of those revenues in Bitcoin and just see what happens, right?
Yeah, it's minuscule. But yeah, also what's interesting here, and I think talking about stuff like we talked about the international implications of legal tender law, there's another thing that I wanted to touch upon, which is very interesting and very germane to what we're all doing here, is we have to establish conversations with regulators. A lot of what we saw here in El Salvador, and now we're dealing with in Guatemala, is trying to get regulators comfortable with Bitcoin, one, but also explaining to them how it works. Because at some point, let's say, let's live in a world where Bitcoin is successful, right? And then you're asking all of these AML, KYC questions, right? So the concept here is this: are we gonna KYC AML our children? Because Bitcoin only lives digitally. There's no physical representation of Bitcoin. Do you really want to walk down that road where we're KYC 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, teenagers? What does that do to their privacy? Because let's say I'm a dad, I want to teach my kids about money, not big money, but money is now Bitcoin, right? Do I have to go to a certain, DMV-like place, get my kid a photograph so he can open a wallet?
Yeah, it's a very important point, a very good point. And it's something else that should be leaned into. Think of the children. People always it's one of the strongest arguments you can ever make to get people's emotions going is, what about the children? Bitcoiners need to start leaning into the children.
No, and it's really important, because I think about that, because I just had my first kid, right? And I want to teach her about Bitcoin, and I want to give her some Bitcoin when she's old enough, and I want her to be able to go to the store and spend Bitcoin and, have their own lemonade stand, if you will. And am I going to be able to do that if we're KYCing everybody? Because right now, that's what we do, right? We have to KYC. There's no customer through our doors that doesn't fill out like 10 pages of paperwork. And are we going to do that with our kids? So I really encourage, I don't know if any regulators listen to your show, Marty, but I
know I have an FBI agent. That's about it. But
nobody's listening and actually takes this question seriously, because we have, and as a community, I think we should, call our, whoever we can that's in touch with the regulators and start having this discussion sooner than later, because it is going to be important.
That's an extremely good point. Like we're going to need to fight this battle early and often, because again, if we don't, we can fall into the despotic hell trap of everybody's data just being out there, and young people's data specifically. It's not.
Well, if I can do a quick, I think I'm not stepping on anybody's toes here. Let me see, because most of the information here is public. I'll just help you tie it up. Yeah, I think I can say this. So I don't know if you recall when Chivo launched that, every transaction was had contained the name and the ID, and I think even date of the person, birthday of the person who was making that transaction. I don't know if you recall that.
Yeah, and then they switched it to Matt Alborg. Right.
Yeah. Well, the reason why that happened is because they didn't understand Lightning technology, the guys that were setting this up, right? And so they tried to use the memo field in Lightning to ID the transaction, because that's what the law, not the law, but like the guidelines on how you had to handle Bitcoin transactions said. That's what they drafted, what the regulators drafted in El Salvador. Like right now, if you go to the law in El Salvador and you read it, the only reason they did that was because the regulators asked it. They told them that it had to be there in every transaction. And imagine that security flaw, right? You hacked yourself. Congratulations.
Yeah. Congratulations, you
So,
played yourself.
Yeah, and so we that's why we need to also teach regulators how this technology works, how it's different than what they're used to, and how we can get them comfortable with this, because there's a lot of players, and if we really want to get this mainstream, everybody has to be comfortable with using Bitcoin.
Yeah. Fortunately, just to finish that one off, fortunately, the regulations are there. Really, it's drafted on the use of cash, so you just have to make them understand that Bitcoin on a Lightning or Bitcoin in general is actually digital cash. It's straight up what Satoshi said, is digital cash. So on a regulation side, you have to see it more as a digital cash version. And on cash, I mean, I can give my kid 5 quetzales, which is our currency here, and he can go down to the store and buy it. He was KYC'd. So yeah. why should digital cash ask for this same thing if it's this, it brings the same purpose to it? So if you give them the hints and show them we already have it, you just have to adapt it, then they feel comfortable. In general, I think, because we talk a lot about the technical side, but this is very human. And as humans, very social. First and foremost, we're humans, and we need other humans to explain this to us, and we need to feel comfortable. And I think this is a shout out to all the Bitcoiners out there, man. You're not just holding Bitcoin for yourself. You're holding Bitcoin for the future generations and for the growth of humanity in itself. So go out and speak out and explain and be patient, and don't be too cocky right now. The ETFs are open and it's going to blow up.
And the other thing that I'm thinking a lot about is that we really have to start pushing back. And this is not only Bitcoiners, but I believe everybody should start pushing back against the criminalization of money.
Mm-hmm.
I believe right now you have a bill being proposed that every transaction over $600
gets reported to the IRS.
Has to get reported at some level, IRS or whoever, doesn't matter. the thing there is that if that assumes that every transaction above $600 is criminal. So where is the presumption of innocence in all this? I believe our laws were built upon presumption of innocence, if I'm not mistaken. I may be.
They're supposed to be
But-
negative laws, negative rights, right? Like,
Exactly. And there's a very important reason for this, and it's the following. It's very hard to prove it's very hard to disprove a negative. So for example, if I say, Marty loves to do coke and loves hookers, right?
oh,
And I
don't
just
tell
go
me
out and say that. and then shouldn't the onus be on me to prove that is the case? Because honestly, there's no amount of proof that you can present that it's going to be enough to satisfy that burden, which is what happens to companies, and that's why it takes years. We were talking at the beginning that companies here get sued by employees claiming with false or truthful claims. We don't know, but because the onus is on the employer to prove his innocence, and that is almost impossible to do. If I say, for example, Marty, you owe me $100,000. Perfect. Why? Prove it. No, but if I'm automatically considered in the right, and you have to prove that you've never A, had contact with me, B, I've never given you 100K. How do you do that?
yeah, you could just say, hey, I gave him a duffel bag full of cash. It's like,
Yeah,
I can't disprove that.
you can't disprove it. And that's why we have to prove. And right now with this criminalization of money laws, they're inverting that process. So it gets very hard. We don't have 70% unbanked or 80% unbanked in the world by accident. We have it because we have all of these laws that make it so hard to comply with that there are potential customers that just get left behind. It's too expensive to onboard them. If, for example, there's going to be a guy here in Guatemala that's going to be depositing $100 a month, maybe. Am I going to spend $200 onboarding him? Absolutely not. And that's why we have unbanked. That's why we have underbanked. And that's why we have to understand what these laws are in effect doing. They're switching around the onus of the proof of innocence, right? Which is morally wrong in my estimation, right? And then it's making it very expensive to, onboard customers, very expensive. And so if we just take this new financial 21st century system and we to onboard new people, and we'll be able to onboard more people to a point, but we won't be able to onboard 100%. Because, for example, here we have a law, and I think this law was drafted, someplace in the US or wherever, where everybody has a receipt, right? Everybody has proof of address. Right now, there's a bunch of people in Guatemala that cannot open a bank account because they don't have proof of address. Why not? They live in a village. There's no running water. There's no electricity. There's no addresses. There's no bills that go to their house. They have no proof of address. And we're killing them economically. Maybe not with a gun, but economically we're killing them.
Yeah.
We're leaving them behind. And now we have this wonderful technology that's able to solve this problem, but we're going to make the same mistake. We're going to make it criminal to own it unless you have proof of your existence.
Well, Matt always yells at me when I do this, but that's why I love Bitcoin, right? Like, affords you the ability to peacefully disobey, to exert civil disobedience, and like that's what I hope personally. Is that the villagers in Guatemala don't have proof of address and don't have the ability to get onboarded via traditional means, just disobey. They download a mobile wallet or whatever it may be, and they just start accepting Bitcoin and just thwarting the onerous laws.
And here's the thing that I feel comfortable saying with this to you because I've already said it to the regulators and they understand. They want to help. Honestly, most regulators are not bad people. I'm sure there may be some malicious guy somewhere that's like, kind of like Dr. Evil.
Well, your brother's doing that, so I wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember this from, I don't know if you had this cartoon. I'm gonna probably date myself, but there was this cartoon in the 80s of a race, and they had this. Do you remember the
the world race,
something like that?
The Amazing Race?
Amazing Race,
Yeah,
that's the one.
The Amazing Race, something
And
like
the
that.
Count, the Red Baron.
Yeah, there was
the
a count. So anyway, but we've talked to the regulators and we've explained these concerns to them because they are concerned. We're not saying, there should be no loss. It's not about that. It's about including all the disadvantaged people and having a pathway forward and establishing groundworks and a framework where we can actually service these customers, right? Where, underage people, where our children have access to Bitcoin, where the most impoverished people have access
It's on your side, Marty. It's on your side. There you go. There we go. I'm hosting a live streaming session here at the TFTC. Thank you for listening in. That was a great loop. So JP, we're the new hosts of Tales from the Crypt.
Are we still live? Wow, we're real
So how's it
proud.
going, people?
Is Marty some 100,000 subscribers now?
Yeah, I hope Marty comes back in. There you go.
I should have known, Esteban, when you started fist pumping that the loop was going on. God damn it. Sorry.
But it was fun. It was fun.
What was the loop word?
Do.
Sorry about that. I'm buying a new laptop this week, so hopefully these problems stop. And of course, Jose was just in the middle of a very passionate.
Yeah.
We need
passion speech.
Yeah, Jose, you're joining us again. I'm sorry that happened in the middle of your impassioned speech. He's connecting audio, but I mean, I'll just echo what he was saying. Like, it is important. We're at we're transitioning into the digital age, right? Like, and we need to, I think, regulators, politicians, whoever it may be, need to show some humility and understand, hey, you can't form fit the regulations of the last century onto this nation technology. Like, it literally doesn't work. You're gonna make people worse off for it. Jose, I'm sorry about that.
No worries. I left just in case it wasn't my end.
That was me. That one was me.
Oh, sorry.
It's the TFTC
Okay.
difference.
So just to wrap up what I was completely thought is that we have to have a way to include everybody basically. And I think that regulators sometimes, and not because they don't they want to be bad and they want to be like, oh, I don't want the guys in Guatemala to open a bank account, right? It's not that. It's just that they probably never thought of, didn't occur to them that there might be people living out there that have no proof of address.
Mhm.
And so we have to voice our concerns in a reasonable manner, just like they do. Like their concerns are, what if this is being used for illegal activities? Okay, let's find a framework for them, but it has to be a framework that doesn't exclude people. There has to be a way. We have to get creative. We got to put our heads together, and there has to be a way where we can, kind of marry those things
Yeah.
in the least harmful way.
Yeah, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And that's one thing I've been trying to explain to people too, and really drive the point home is like those things. Like, yes, people may be buying drugs and doing illegal things with Bitcoin, but their illegal activities are external to Bitcoin in a sense. Like, you need to focus on that external. Why are they committing crimes? How are they able to? And where and when are they doing it? And not throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to Bitcoin and the ability to send and receive it for every individual. Like, I think it's pretty safe to say that most people in the world are not drug dealers, and that use case will be very minuscule compared to the volume of illicit trade in the Bitcoin network, and that's already been proven. Like the regulators here are already saying, like, yeah, it's not really used for illicit activities. People are just holding it.
And on the upside, we also have to look at what this presents, right? Like, okay, listen, that's like the bad part of it, right? But let's look at the good. Let's look at what's enabled by these technologies, right? And so we have to really help them understand these dreams of seamless cross-border payments. And the thing is that right now we have this very narrow band of international payments that are efficient. And that's between like $1,000 and $10,000 approx, right? And once you go under $1,000, it gets very expensive really fast. And once you go over $10,000, it starts to get expensive and complicated, right? And so that's this. But imagine all of let's go lower bound. I'm not going to worry about big money. Let's worry about small money. So if we go lower bound and we can start doing $10 payments cross-border, what about $5 payments? What about half-dollar payments? What about less? Then you have to see that there's this opportunity for international commerce that was previously unavailable to most everybody, where you can have customers around the world, depending on the service or product you're delivering, where you can do micro payments, where you can do payments, nano charges, where you can actually stream money depending on the service you're going to be delivering. And that opens a whole new world of opportunities. And if you add that to all the creativity that's currently locked up because they don't have access to a bank account. Like I keep reading stories of kids from Africa that, they developed this wind turbine because they needed water in their village, right? Something like that. Doesn't matter. But they didn't need a bank account. Imagine if they did. Imagine if they could start interacting with the rest of the world on an economical level. The productivity explosion that could happen is going to dwarf anything we've seen so far.
Completely agree.
Like the Industrial Revolution had a little, they improved and there was an explosion of productivity and creativity. But now with this technology, with including, 70, 80% of the world that's still waiting on the sidelines, so to speak, and we bring them in, that explosion is going to dwarf it, absolutely. And so let's not shoot ourselves in the foot. That's all I'm saying.
No, I completely co-sign that message too. And I like in regards to remittance too, like I had this epiphany today. I had a family member who wanted to buy something and they were only accepting Bitcoin as payment and they didn't have, they're into Bitcoin, but they keep their stuff. I'm not going to dox their security, but they didn't have access to their Bitcoin and the ability to send a transaction. They just took a screenshot of a QR code and said, "Hey, can you pay this for me? I'll send you cash or Bitcoin later." And I just paid it for them. And so that like they're in a completely different state here in the US. And so that's just like an example. Imagine like remittance could get so granular that you have a family member in Guatemala who's going to the store to buy food. And they're like, "Hey, can you pay for this real quick for me?" And boom, done. Like,
Imagine medicine. You have a medical emergency. You have your kid here, your brother or father or whoever is in the US, and you have to have that medicine right now. You can go to the pharmacy and could be paid instantly in the middle of the night.
yeah, it's insane. It's happening. It's happening.
It is happening in El Salvador. I mean, micro remittances is going to put so much adoption and chipping into the financial inclusion thing, because a lot of banks talk about financial inclusion and regulators, and they use this as a big word, but I don't think they put into context the incentives. And I think one of the beautiful things about Bitcoin, and it's the incentives, right? It incentivizes you to do good. And that's why you add value to the network whenever whoever joins in. And that's very difficult to do. But the incentive right now, as Jose was saying, for financial inclusion is just not there. And you have to be very blunt and honest about that. The financial inclusion is not working because there's no incentive to do so. Because the business of the bank is, to make money with more money. So why should they go to a region where there's no money? Just doesn't make logical sense. Now, if in the economy right now, they're asking for financial inclusion, they're asking a track record. So everything is running on a track record. To get a loan, you need a track record of an income. And on top of that track record, you still have to have a collateral, right? Some type of collateral to give. And then you have your income track record. And on that is how you get your loan. And that's just absurd. I mean, you're leaving really most of human beings out. And if you switch that to Bitcoin, you can actually build your collateral slowly, very, very slowly. You can actually get to a point where you have enough collateral to, get out a loan and work for yourself. Whilst your underlying collateral keeps on growing, you have a liquidity to act positively in your economy. So it's very simple. And I think when we do that jump, and it's going to happen, probably it's going to happen in El Salvador within 1 or 2 years with people hodling their Bitcoin. But when they realize they can do that jump, and when they start in that process where the first year is, let's say I have 25% of my collateral, I have $25 to interact. But the next year, Bitcoin kept on growing, right? 200% in average. So now I have 75. Now it starts to get interesting. Mm-hmm. And from 75, I have 150. So that exponential growth throughout the years is going to make a big change. So it's just patience and looking at the incentive structure. And banks in El Salvador are starting to realize about this, because it will be for them way more efficient to give out a loan backed by Bitcoin than backed by anything else. As simple as that.
Jose, I want to tie this up with a concept that we used to throw out back then, that we've really done a disservice to the younger generations with not teaching history and with forgetting the lessons we've learned. And I go back a lot to Adam Smith and to Bastiat. There are a couple of very basic concepts that are easy to understand, and Smith laid it out, and it was a great observation that helped with the Industrial Revolution. And it was that the does not make the bread for me because he is a good person. If I'm paying him, it doesn't matter what his, if he's a good, he's bad, if he hits his wife or the other extreme. What matters is that he's incentivized to bake the bread for me because he sees a benefit from it, and that this drives the economy. This drives economic growth. This incentive structures that let me thrive. And by taking care of my own self-interest, I am a valuable part of the community where I develop, where I live. And this type of incentives, like having governments that lay the groundwork for people to voluntarily do commerce or do their economic activity, this is what the government should do. They should not be going in there and dictating what's good, what's bad. They lay the groundwork, the incentives for people to voluntarily interchange their work, and this will make societies thrive. And then there's this idea that Bastiat mentions, and it's if you write the law in a way where you have to choose between acting morally or following the law, you'll send the society into chaos, because both choices are detrimental to social well-being. And this is what we're setting up right now with the type of regulations we're doing. You either have to choose between acting morally, and to me, doing voluntary interchanges of products and services, this is acting morally when it's voluntary and the two parties benefit. And you have to choose between either acting morally or following the law, where you either have to provide a service that the person doesn't want or have to deny a service that the person wants because it is set in law. Then we are furthering the social sickness and spreading social sickness around. So I think it's very positive that Bitcoin helps align people's incentives. And this is the main reason that governments should embrace it, because it will help them lay the groundwork for social incentives that are beneficial to the communities.
Yeah, you're channeling Adam Smith, Bastiat, and Thomas Jefferson. If a law is unjust, the man is not only right to disobey it, he is obliged to do so. And I think
That's awesome.
I think I'm gonna have to leave in a little bit. So I just want to wrap up with one last thought that I think is important, and it's basically this: money is the bedrock upon which society is built. There's a bunch of reasons for this, but let's assume I'm correct. So money is the bedrock upon which society is built, and money is basically a tool that we use as human beings for a bunch of stuff. And the problem right now that we are seeing is that as we debase our currency, as we attack the basic properties of money, which is scarcity, fungibility, transferability, or portability, and all these divisibility, fungibility. We attack the basic properties of money, which is what we're doing right now with obviously the debasement, with the printing of money. It's no longer scarce, with all the KYC AML regulations, and it's no longer fungible, no longer divisible, no longer all of this stuff. We're attacking, we're eroding the bedrock upon which society is built. And we do that at our own peril, because the crumbling of society, how the Roman Empire fell, was precisely because of this. And they only attacked scarcity and I believe transportability. Those were the two only. Now we're attacking all five at the same time. All of the rumblings across societies, across the world, I'm convinced have to do with the erosion of money as a tool. And so that's, that saying, fix the money, fix the world, it's 100% true. And why is that? It's because money is the ultimate agent of peace.
Right.
Without money, the only way to get what you want is through violence.
Again, I don't want to. I feel like I said I completely agree a lot of times in this episode, but I do completely agree with that, and I think that's a powerful message. We got to stop attacking the rock of human civilization and begin getting freedom enabling tools, which Bitcoin is, into more people's hands. Not only a freedom enabling tool, but a tool that fixes the money, like you just said. And I couldn't be happier to know that we have gentlemen like yourselves working to build these tools out and the infrastructure out to get Bitcoin into more individuals' hands in Guatemala, El Salvador, and beyond. So I just want to just give an immense shout out of gratitude to you guys. Like, thank you for doing what you do. Like I said earlier in the episode, I had like somewhat of an epiphany talking to Carlino, hearing about what you guys are building, and I think you guys are building infrastructure in the correct way, and I'm just really excited to see how what you're building proliferates in El Salvador and Guatemala and beyond again, and how that not only helps Bitcoin but helps the individuals in Central America leveraging it. So you guys are doing God's work down there. Thank you for coming on. Sorry for the technical difficulties, of course. This is TFTC. We're going to have some technical difficulties, but it is always embarrassing. And I'm pumped that we were able to do this on such short notice. So I don't know if you guys have anything you want to end it on. Jose, just give a very impassioned speech there. Another one. I think that's four.
Yeah.
I think that's
It's difficult to follow that one. It's very, very difficult. But I think that's why we do what we do, and we do it very passionately, as you can see. So everybody reach out. We have our Twitter and everything, IBEX Mercado, if you guys want to reach out and talk. We're very active on Twitter, and we're on Instagram as well. And yeah, looking forward to grow this. It's a very interesting times to be alive. I'm impressed. Like, I'm just, full of gratitude.
Yeah, it's hard not to wake up every day and be excited. I woke up and I was like, oh, I'm talking with the IBEX Mercado guys at 11 a.m. Let's go.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, Marty. I want to shout out to the people at Bitcoin Beach. I always like to say that the guys in El Salvador, what they did was truly groundbreaking, and they did their part, and they're still doing it. And now it's time for us to add to the work they're doing. We're living through a monetary, what's the word? Diluvio. Monetary deluge. Is that a word?
Something like
revolution.
When it rains a lot, deluge.
Deluge. Yeah.
Yeah, we're living through that, and now we're building Noah's Ark to protect everybody from it, and we're trying to bring as many of the animals that we can on board, starting by ourselves. So join in, guys, pitch in, and it's been a pleasure, Marty. Thanks for the time.
Yeah. Pleasure's been all mine.
And myself, 2 shout outs. First, basically to all of the Lightning community. I don't have time right now to go over everybody who helped us. We have to realize that Lightning being a success, or the success that it was in El Salvador, it wasn't just us, it was everybody, because honestly, we reached out. The first thing we did was we reached out to them, like Juan said, the Lightning Lab guys, CDB, CEOs, Wallet of Satoshi, too many to count, Bitcoin Beach, of course. And honestly, everybody in Lightning came in, they pitched in. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, as any good project. And then, so that's one shout out I wanted to give. And the other one, I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out Greg Foss, who's been so kind to us. He's been awesome as a counselor, as somebody that we can lean on to get his perspective, and who's just been awesome in the space as well. And we love him very much at IBEX, and I think, I think you guys have talked a couple of times.
Boss is the boss.
I'm loving for Greg Foss to officially take on Jose as a mentor. Jose can do his official mentorship with Greg, and that would be great. So, Greg, thanks for everything.
Shout out to Greg Foss, the boss, doing the Lord's work from Canada. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Again, thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for joining me, and keep fighting the good fight. I think we're going to win with people like you on Bitcoin side. I think we're going to win.
We will.
That's all we got this week, freaks. Peace and love.
Bye-bye.